All right, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful, what is it, Monday?
Mm.
In case you are wondering why my head is tilted, it's because I am going through, and I was very transparent about this, I'm going through some form of vertigo. So, just a heads up, and if you see my camera off and my friend Chris here is not talking to himself, he's talking to me. So, I practice what I preach. Sometimes we go through shit. Excuse my language. I hope LinkedIn doesn't censor me because of what I just said. But we roll with the punches, right,
Yeah.
Chris?
All the time, every time.
All the
Like,
time.
yeah.
So my head tilted is not a sign of disinterest, but it's just a little thing that I'm dealing with at the moment. But let me tell you why we're here. Okay. Happy Monday, everyone. This is especially for you if you are a designer or a creative. There's a lot of you as part of my following and my connections. And what you're going through right now, in a nutshell, is you're not happy with your career. You want more. And that could be due to a multitude of reasons. Whether you feel that the role that you're doing is too junior, but no one is acknowledging that, whether it's recruiters, whether it's your current organization. Maybe you're going through burnout. Maybe you're not going through a lot of luck when it comes to applying for roles. Maybe you are stuck in the first interview and you can't get through. It could be a gazillion reasons and you don't understand why. But the bottom line is you want to be in a career that you absolutely love, a career that just makes you excited waking up in the morning. And I think a lot of you know that my entire brand is around authenticity and being yourself. At the end of the day, we cannot have a dual personality where we're someone else at work and we're someone else outside of work. So here I'm bringing on my friend Chris. Chris is a colleague. I've known him for a very long time. He's great at what he does. I mean, full transparency, I've worked with career transitioners for a very long time, but everyone has a niche. And I do feel that the needs of designers is very nuanced. And I invited Chris because he's an amazing coach. He's helped hundreds of people, whether it's building their confidence as designers, whether it's landing jobs aligned with their sweet spot, and at different levels, whether it's people breaking into UX or getting promoted. So, Chris, I am passing the baton for you. Maybe just do a quick intro and let us know why you're excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Nada. Full transparency. I mean, I just got on this with Nada after meeting with one of my clients, and we had a good. I'll be honest. I was the one that had a good cry. I'm just owning that, like, because part of this journey, no matter where you're at, can be emotional based on whatever part of a struggle that you're going through.
Yeah.
And sometimes, as coaches, it's important to bear our struggles with the people that we're trying to serve, and for me, the community I'm trying to serve. And it can be hard to look back sometimes,
Yes.
but one of the things that I use as an anchor for myself is, it's like almost like this mantra: I am trying to be the type of coach and mentor I wish I had all those years ago, working in jobs and roles and scenarios that had nothing to do with design, nothing to do with creating an impact in the places and industries that I dreamed of being in. And if I could go back in time and change that, I still wouldn't do it, because it wouldn't give me this insight, this kind of hard won wisdom that I'm passing on to and using to support people, the people that I work with. And I wouldn't change that. It's hard. It was hard. My journey was nothing like the people that I was seeing, my peers and colleagues, especially coming. I'm in Toronto. I went to OCAD-U, and all of the people that were like my contemporaries and my peers, so much talent, breaking into directions and fields that I could only dream of, and I felt like I was being left behind and I couldn't figure it out. And my journey, my first years coming out of high school, going into that was all struggle. I never had it easy, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make that load a little bit lighter for those people who have a dream or stuck between a rock and a hard place. And thank goodness for how interconnected our world is now, because I can help a lot of people, as many people as I can.
And I'm not, and I wish I could nod my head right now, but this is me nodding my head. So, Chris, where I want to start, because as you know, I'm big on stories and I'm big on asking people about the story that really explains why they do what they do. And so where I want to start is your formative years, your childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about whatever you feel comfortable sharing from your childhood that positioned you, or that really like made you truly advocate for the idea of that you don't want to give up on people. Tell us where that comes from.
Yeah, and it's a good thing I had my cry already before. Like,
I'm not laughing because I'm a sadist, but anyway,
yeah.
As a coach, I've had my own share of a roller coaster of a day, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just gonna say it. So
Say it,
I was raised by a single parent, my mom, powerhouse, my first superhero before I even knew what superheroes were. My parents divorced. I was 4, and I remember my dad leaving. I remember him leaving. We were in like the foyer of like our like townhouse, and he left. And I didn't understand what that meant. But it taught me, even though I couldn't put it into words, especially when I became a teenager and an adult, that you don't give up on people. And that was the first lesson. And for a long time, for better and for worse, that is how I lived my life.
Yeah.
To be there for people, period. Even if it meant it cost me something. I've had to refine that observation so that I can serve in a way that's healthy, and I figured it out. But that's where it came from, and that's where it started, even though I didn't know what that was at 4 years old.
Wow, that's incredible. And knowing you very well for the past, I don't know, 4 years almost, it makes sense. It really makes sense why you have such a big heart and you're always there to really help and support people. So you had this happen in your childhood. And if you're listening, give us a like if this is something that resonates with you, or just share with us in the comment. It's always helpful to get feedback and to see who's listening.
Yeah.
But I suspect that whether you listen to this live or you listen to the replay, some of you might listen to this in the replay, because Chris and I were quite intentional about not promoting this ahead of time. We decided to improvise. And hey, if you're listening to this, whether live or offline, this is a sign. This is a sign right there for the universe. So give us a like, and it will be good to follow up with you. But let's talk about your first pivot, Chris, because one of the big things that a lot of people talk to me about is the fear of career transitions. And you have gone through so many pivots in your journey, in your career. Yeah. And you shared with me earlier that one of your first pivots is that actually one of the first pivots is you went into OCAD, but before you got into OCAD, You
Mhm.
actually auditioned for drama programs. Tell us what you were like as a kid and why you decided to get into drama.
It's the thing that fit. I was, until 7 years old, I was an only child, bursting with energy, which is not uncommon, but I was always looking for attention and trying to make people laugh, and I enjoyed it. Before I even knew who Jim Carrey was, or like the
Oh my
concept
goodness.
of a Jim Carrey, that was the path that I was on. And then with like In Living Color and Mad TV, I'm like, these are my people. I'm seeing people being wild and zany, and I won. That's how I'm going to live my life. And so, I was a mischievous child, but at the same time, I liked entertaining people. And in grade 6, I was in a school play, and it was the first time I was on stage and allowed, with like my cast members, allowed to be wild and zany. It was a Charlie Brown play, and I was Snoopy, and like everyone was okay with it. They were okay with my wild and zany. Like it was not a typical Snoopy. It was just me doing the role and doing the thing. But everyone loved what we were doing, and I'm sorry, I kind of stole the show. And I'm like, and my mom now understood, okay, wait a minute. The puzzle piece connect. Chris has all this energy. He's focusing it in a constructive manner, and people are responding to it. And so slowly experimenting different plays, drama programs, going through high school, and that was my bread and butter. I was only good at drama and art class. I was passable in everything else. And then I was like, I know acting is hard, but like, I'm going to try for U of T. I'm going to try for York. And I didn't get in. And I was like, shoot, what am I going to do now? I don't know. But thankfully, and I've been thinking about him recently, Mr. John Hughes, my art teacher, he told me that a place existed for art students, and I have that ability, and it was OCAD. And he supported me, and he told me what I needed to do to get my work ready. And he was one of the few people who didn't write me off as a troublemaker. I was just
Wow.
mischievous and just imaginative. And then my drama teacher also saw something. So when people saw something in me, I was like, I'm going to double down on it because they believe in me. And I couldn't put it into words, but it meant a lot, especially after being labeled as a troublemaker and a mess up kid and a no potential kid. But I saw pathways thanks to these people, these teachers, Rick Hughes and John Hughes, no relation. And I went down that road. I didn't get into drum program, but I got into OCAD because someone believed in me, and I never looked back.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And hi, Ala from Morocco. My goodness,
Wow.
it must be very late for you to pop in
Thank
and
you
say
for
hi
coming.
to us. Thank you for saying hi.
Mhm.
Chris, what I really love is your positivity. Um, you know, I was watching something yesterday. I actually was watching a YouTube video with Mel Robbins. She was interviewing a neuropsychologist,
Mhm.
and he went through a very troubled childhood,
Mhm.
or let's call it a difficult childhood. We all have different degrees of difficult childhood. I myself had a very difficult childhood. I grew up with an alcoholic father. It was always didn't could not predict when the next tantrum is going to happen. And as a child, something that happens is you start blaming yourself when you have dysfunction in your childhood.
Mhm.
And, you know, that neuropsychologist, he shared something. There are one of two things that usually happen when we grow up in, let's call it, non-typical childhoods. Either the child ends up getting into, let's say, non-healthy disruptive behavior, whether it's alcohol abuse, becoming part of a gang, doing drugs, or they become high achievers.
Mhm.
And so, what I'm seeing, which is similar to the path that I decided to choose, is I decided to make lemonade out of those lemons, right? I decided that, I could either feel sorry for myself or I could better my situation. And so I love how you channeled what you went through into really becoming that person who makes people laugh and crack jokes. Now, in your hero journey, we're very excited for you because it almost sounds like you found your calling, and that is getting into the drama program.
Mm.
But then it sounds like that didn't happen, and you pivoted into what we can call is your second love, illustration, right? And that's when you got into OCAD.
Yeah.
So tell us, how did that unfold? Did you end up, completing OCAD, or what happened with that?
No, I didn't, because I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford it. I was there for 3 years. No, officially, the math is so weird. I feel like I could have completed 2 degrees with the amount of time, because I had to switch to the part-time track. So I was in OCAD for 7 years off and on, but I wasn't able to finish it. I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get OSAP, right? And so with that in mind, somehow I was able to get funding for a graphic design program outside of OCAD. And I took that opportunity to get some kind of certificate, diploma, so that I could justify that I had the skills to do the work that I wanted to do. And I went to that intensive 1 year no break program. It was being run out of the CBC building here in Toronto, the International Academy of Design. I don't think it's around anymore, but that's where I cut my teeth. Translation, that's where I got my foundational graphic design training, plus my OCAD illustration training. And after that, I started to get contract and freelance work after I finished the graphic design program. So that's what happened as far as OCAD. And yeah, having to pivot again, actually, because I learned that illustration for me was more of a hobby, because my goal was to become a comic book artist. I don't know if you can see, like, I'm a I am, that's Darkwing Duck, like right there. I wanted to be a comic book illustrator, and I
Wow.
actually got to I would consider myself lucky, because I had an internship while I was in high school for a comic book studio based in Toronto, and they invited me to join after that term, and I was like, yeah. But then I had to juggle OCAD and like a part-time job, and I couldn't handle it. So yeah, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned about what the life of like a professional illustrator would be, and it stopped being compatible, and that's why I pivoted to graphic design.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
That is an incredible journey. And really, what it shows me is resilience. A lot of people, they're scared of making a change, number one. Number two, like up to this point in your story that you're sharing with us, you try, you make a change, you get into something, it doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And then you try again and it doesn't work out. And you try again. First, it was getting into drama school. You didn't get in.
Mm-mm.
Then you went into illustration and OCAD. You're so excited because you've been selected by, if you guys are not in Canada or not in Toronto and are not familiar, OCAD is actually one of the top design colleges in probably, I will even venture and say, one of the top in Canada. And so to me, I'm just picturing, young Chris finally excited that he's getting a break, getting into one of the top, colleges, and imagining what his future is going to look like, and then dealing with the disappointment of not having the tuition and funds to complete it. And if you are in the audience and hearing this, I'm sure some of you, must have been in that situation where you wanted to get the degree, the certification, the education to pursue your dream, and don't have the funding or the resources to go through it. And maybe some of you might have been able to gather the resources, and then all of a sudden you can't continue.
Yep.
That must have been very devastating for you.
Yeah, I totally felt like a failure. And then scrambling to figure out, it took me time to figure out what a next step would be like. Like, how do I, like, I've come this far, And there was a teacher there at OCAD who also believed in me, and I was like, this is most definitely not going to be the end. I have to figure something out. And with some amount of time, probably wasn't, it was definitely not a year, significantly less, I found out that this other program existed and I could transfer my credits. And I went through all of that in order to go to the graphic design program. And I got actually got a scholarship, which helped. But then, and then I also got a loan, an OSAP, like Ontario academic loan from, like, in order to go to this school. Why they wouldn't let me have it for OCAD, I will never know. But I made it anyway. Take that, OCAD. I made it anyway.
Exactly.
So, that's what happened.
Yeah, your journey is very similar to mine as well at this point, because a lot of you may know this following me. I grew up with a family that said either you're an engineer, a doctor, a failure, and I went to Queen's University.
Mm-hmm.
I was partly excited about the idea because it was a software engineering program. I will say the common denominator between what aligned with what I enjoy doing and that program is I've always loved, teaching, and I did have a fascination around computers, but it wasn't exactly the right fit for me. I did not picture myself as a programmer. I am not an overly technical person. I'm a people person, but I was excited and I could not complete the degree. I actually spent 3.5 years of my life in that degree. It was impacting my mental health. I felt like a failure. My situation is a little bit different, where it wasn't necessarily the funding that didn't allow me to continue. It was the fact that it just wasn't the right fit from a capability perspective. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is, Chris, I think you hear this a lot too, in terms of the people who reach out to you for help and people you mentor. This whole thing about, I'm too old, right, to change direction. You and I are around the same age. And, at that point, you could have said this to yourself. You could have said, I'm too old. I should just give up, forget it. But you kept pushing through and you kept pivoting. So 2008, I believe, was when the recession hit. This was like, I was around that time. I was also in my first real full-time role at one of the big consulting companies. And I remember how scary that time was. Like, banks were literally collapsing and we were all terrified of losing our jobs. And for you, that was a reality.
Yeah.
I just want everyone to imagine this for a second, because some of you, again, you're in that situation. You think that right now it's bad, the recession is bad, and there's no hope for you. I want you to hear what happened to Chris here. He finally got his break. He finally got his first job. He finally, got that degree so that he can have that fulfilling design role. And he's just trying to get his foot in the door. And just when he finally gets his break, he gets laid off. So tell us, like, how bad it was for you to get out of this situation.
Yeah. After all of that previous struggle, I got my first junior design job, and I was there for 6 months, 6 to 8 months, and then when the recession hit, I was laid off, and it was like so close. It's well, not even so close. Like, I thought I finally made it to the party, the adult career party. And like, all right, now I just gotta put in the work, and I'll grow and evolve and things will fall into place. Nope. I was hearing about the recession at that time, and I went into work that day And then they're like, sorry. And I took the bus too. And then like, sorry, like due to blah, 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 we gotta tighten the belt. And so we have to let you go. And like
Oh
one
my
of the
God.
like senior managers drove me back
Oh,
home. And that was awkward as F, but it was completely out of my hands. In 2008. And so, you know, I wasn't exactly sure what to do other than just start applying to jobs. And it took me about a year. And I certainly wasn't depressed at that point. Like I was like, this sucks. I just got here and now I have to go home. But yeah, I had to take on a lot of unrelated jobs in order to maintain until the next thing materialized. And in that period, I was sending out most definitely hundreds of resumes without any progress, design related progress. I was getting, I mean, I had to work in a factory, just moving boxes.
oh my God.
I've cleaned office buildings. I've done admin jobs, like administration jobs. I've gone door to door doing like government survey canvas work. I had to do what I had to do until I could figure out the next move and then attack it somehow. And it wasn't easy. But I'd come that far and I wasn't at all ready to give up. Yeah.
Now, so you're a principal designer at one of the top, gaming companies in the world. And you coach people who have gone through the exact situation that you've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to ask you what you would advise people in your situation. I'm going to ask you a different question. Knowing everything that you know today, over a decade of experience, what would you coach the Chris who was going through that in that moment, applying for hundreds of jobs and feeling like you have to be someone you are not in order to land that role? What would
Yeah.
you tell that Chris today?
Yeah. That Chris today, if I was to talk to him, I'd tell him that you need help and you can't do this on your own. You can't, bro. Like, I applaud your grit, but kiddo, it's bigger than you, and you need more brain power. Like, good on you, but you need to go. You need to find a sage. You need to find some kind of scenario, like niche wizard. You want to go and you want to stay in design. You need to talk to more designers who are further along than you,
Yeah.
who tons of battle scars in their own way. And you need to listen to what they're trying to share with you and experiment, because everything I did back then was supported by resources that knew nothing about the work I wanted to do. Like going to I'm going to say it, like job recruitment agencies that are like throughout the Toronto and surrounding area that specialize with nothing related to me. And they're like, oh, you just need to update your resume. We just need to update it.
I want to shoot myself every time I hear it. I mean, guys, don't call anyone.
And I'm like,
not literally, but
yeah.
I mean, real talk. Why do you think people, and I'm just gonna talk about myself here, right? I'm not gonna make assumptions, and I'm not gonna say everyone thinks the same thing. Personally, I'll say this as someone who's an immigrant, first generation Canadian, right? Came here on my own. I've always had this mindset of, before I started investing in coaches and becoming a coach, I always had this mindset that I have to suffer in order for me to succeed. You know, I have to work hard and I have to feel tortured in order for me to succeed. Like, I'll give you an example. For you know, before I started my coaching business, let's talk about my career, right? I always told myself that I have to constantly prove myself in order to get promoted. I have to put in longer hours than everyone else. And I think a lot of it for me personally, it came from my childhood.
Hmm.
Being raised by a father who had a history in the military.
Oh.
Um, and, you know, just the Middle Eastern, and I'll just call it the Eastern mindset of you need to always work hard and prove yourself. And there's a balance, right? The truth is somewhere in the middle. Yes, you need to prove yourself, but you also can ask for help and you can find support, because someone who's been there, they can accelerate your journey. I don't know a single successful person um, who figured it out all on their own. I don't. What do you think? Like, why do people have this need to not reach out for help? Like, based on your experience, what do you think it is?
It's a number of things. And thanks for sharing your, you know, your story and your journey too, Nada. Part of it is what we're taught. Um, and you're 100% correct. Like that's what impacted you. You were taught to suffer. You were taught to believe that you had to no pain, no gain,
Yeah.
so to speak. So there's a definite message around that you've got, like the whole blood, sweat, and tears aspect. Not to say that forging and building our careers should be a cakewalk. It's wonderful when it does happen to some people. It doesn't happen for everybody. And so the concept of why people are experiencing this, another factor is pride, I believe. And working with people one-on-one, even if it's just like hopping on that like preliminary strategy call to find out where they're at in their current journey. Some people are not ready mentally in order to try something different. They're not ready. And you might say, okay, so then what would qualify someone to be ready to like embark on that work, the effort to either transition or to make a change where they're at, to go where they want to go, or going from one side of the spectrum to the other. From in UX terms, it's an iterative mindset, and some people
Yeah.
don't really have that when time comes for them to turn this powerful this powerful set of frameworks on themselves, and which is hard to do for yourself, which is why it's a multiplier, a force multiplier, you might say, to connect with and collaborate with someone who's outside of your situation, who knows the space you're in. And as I mean, I don't think I've suffered the most, but I've had my fair share, and leveraging that to help point out the landmine mistakes or problems that you're encountering, that's worth something. That's worth your time to to save you time, your mental health, and sometimes even your finances. But the years that I spent trying and failing and you know, just getting up close, like on the window, and breathing on the agencies and studios that I was dying to be a part of, and just seeing hustle and bustle. Sometimes I got info interviews and I could go and sit and try to pick their brains to figure out what I was missing, but still couldn't break through. I paid my dues, and I want to see all of us win.
Yeah.
And that's worth a conversation, at least. Like, for you to sit down with someone who's either further along than you, or who has figured out how to do the thing you want to do, that should be worth something to you. Like, I have these dream job tiers, and I can't seem to break in. Well, I guess I'll just keep trying for the next 5 years, and if I don't do it, I guess I'm going to have to do another career and spend my life doing the thing that I don't want to do. And and check it out. If people pivot away from the dream, sort of the dream job tiers that are meaningful to them, to like, maybe there's a parallel and you find satisfaction and fulfillment, great. But what about the people who don't, because they couldn't figure it out? I don't want that to be the scenario for anyone, because I came close to giving up on my own.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I got very close, but then an opportunity came and I gave it everything I had. And I didn't even make it at that point. Like, it wasn't even making it. It was just getting close to the proximity. I got a role, another administration job in proximity to the marketing and design team at the Toronto District School Board. I was able to get within striking distance, and then I had to put another year, almost 2 years in before a role came up, and I had to come up with a doctor's appointment from this role so that I could go for the role over there and interview with a portfolio panel with like the whole people.
Oh my
And it
God.
was just like Mr. Bean. Like, I called the taxi, and then I made it look like I'm got inside. I'm like, I have to change my clothes here. Can you cool with that? And he's like, I got you. And I'm like, and I got there and I did my thing and I beat out 114 people. And then
Wow.
that was that.
Wow. I want to talk about your framework. You have an amazing framework to help people land their roles, specific to designers and creatives, because you shared with me that you've noticed patterns. I think one of your biggest gifts, Chris, knowing you, is you're very charismatic and you truly make people feel comfortable. But something that I have also noticed, having worked with designers as well in the past, is designers tend to be on the introverted side. And it makes sense because you're creative. You do a lot of thinking. That's where a lot of the creativity comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But there is also what I call maybe something that works at your disadvantage, which is the fact that you have this quiet confidence. And in this day and world, you need to be able to sell your ideas and you need to get people to connect with you. And I feel that because maybe it is part of it is that drama side of you, that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
But that's something that you help people, do well, is those people who whisper in meetings and don't have confidence. You really help them speak. But going back to my point in terms of your 3-step framework, why don't you walk us through it? What is the first thing that you work on with someone, a designer who feels stuck, feels stagnant in their career and wants to land a role that lights them up? What is the very first thing that you work on with them before we even talk about applying for jobs?
Sure. Yeah. So, having learned through many, many years of applying and throwing my applications into a black abyss of nothingness and no response, which is soul crushing, it dawned on me to continue to anchor to the things that lit me up. And I'd had those evidence points from drama attempt, from comic book illustration attempt, and graphic design attempt, and it kind of stuck. And so if any of you have heard of Simon Sinek and his book Start With Why and the 5 Whys,
Yeah.
it's an homage to that. And the first step is quite literally to define what your why is. And for me, it quite simply is the connection of the dots between what type of work you want to do and how you want to do it and the people you want to do it with, as like that first that launch, that catapult into the trajectory of what's going to be your career. And that takes effort and energy. And if you cannot I think it's a different type of fuel source as well, because if I'm just applying, I don't know why I'm making it rain, but if you're not just applying to roles willy-nilly based on everything I see on LinkedIn, or you
Yeah,
pick whatever job and
the spray and pray
pray and
phenomena.
pray, right? That takes a lot of energy, and it's soul crushing to get all those rejections. And it also reminds me of one of my clients, Victoria, who had like a thriving career in ad tech. And so when she moved into UX and product design, for her, she thought this was the only sphere, the only industry that she could successfully land that role within. And she was going for it, giving it her all. But when she started to get rejections, it took a toll. And we had, we were having a session off of one of those rejections she got, getting to final stage and talking offers, but then they lowballed her and they said, "Nah, we're gonna get somebody cheaper." And that heart-to-heart conversation surfaced her dream of moving into health tech for a number of reasons, from her previous work and personal reasons. And she lit up when that she told me. I was like, okay, well, is ad tech where you want to stay? And then she told me that. I was like, well, this is good to know. I mean, it would be nice if you shared that earlier. And then what we did, we started doing window shopping to surface for her how that spectrum and the breadth and depth of health tech, medical tech is, and that there are opportunities there. But not just opportunities, but then which organizations, which of these startups actually aligns with her. And she shuddered and sort of distanced herself from like the focus on ad tech. She'd spent so much time on it already, but she pivoted her focus, and that is where she landed her first role, and she's been there for now 3 years.
Wow.
And she's thriving. And
That's
so
incredible.
when you know what your why is, it is a different type of fuel source altogether. You go for things that mean something to you. It's meaningful. It's a meaningful effort, if that makes sense.
And I want to piggyback on that idea. You know, I've also been coaching people for many years. I've been coaching people for the past 5 years. My niche is different than Chris. My niche is executives at this moment in time, and executives who also want to pivot, because I do believe that it doesn't matter what stage you are in or what level of experience you are, your goals change. And we are in a world where we have to be agile. We need to be okay with pivoting, and we shouldn't be terrified of it. A, our interests change. B, the market changes, and the roles change. So we need to be agile. But I want to go deeper into why it's important, for a lack of better words, to be clear on your why. I will give you a perfect example right now. The reason I'm here close to 8 o'clock p.m. and the reason why Chris is also here close to 8 o'clock p.m., even though he has a full-time role and he's been at work all day long and he's still excited to talk to you guys about his experience, is because he's motivated and passionate. And where do we find motivation and passion? When we're very clear on our why, our mission, our purpose, why we're brought on this earth to do what, that capitalizes on our zone of genius. If you don't have that drive, you're not going to want to apply for jobs. It's going to feel like a burden. But if you know that applying for jobs and going through this application process and networking with people is going to put you in a position of bliss, then you're going to do whatever it takes to get there. This is why I'm here at 8 o'clock, because I love my job as a career coach. I love educating people. This is why Chris is here. And so if you don't know what your why is, you're not clear on it, or you're even afraid to pursue it, then you're never going to feel that bliss. Again, I'm piggybacking also on that podcast episode that I watched with the neuropsychologist. And a lot of people have this concept of manifestation. I don't think it is the same idea that people have on what it is. It's not some kind of woo-woo stuff. I don't
Mm.
believe on the woo-woo side of it where, oh, you can just imagine your North Star and your goal and it's just going to happen because it's magic with some metaphysical stuff. I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
What I do believe in, though, is when you start visualizing where you want to be, whether it's 1 year from now or 5 years from now, what that does is it actually changes the physiology in your brain, which is what I learned also in that podcast, and it confirmed it. And what it does is it starts developing habits that align with your goals. You have this motivation to develop these habits, and when you keep implementing these habits and those skills, that's what's actually going to get you there. But where it all starts, where it all stems from, is you being clear on your why. And so this is why your framework is different than, let's say, what I've seen in other coaching programs or boot camps or whatever it is that UXers attend to get their certification. No one, I haven't seen any program that sits with designers and says, let's get clear on your why. How can you share with us a tool that you use, one example out of the many tools that you use that is tactical, that helps people figure out what that is?
Yeah. And for my UX product and service people, I think you're gonna love this. And quite frankly, it's 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 the creation of your career audit timeline and documenting everything you've done in service of where you've been, where you are, and what happened in that. Like I started out here, but that's like your future state planning. But in general, when you take a look at what you've done, and a lot of us have a fair sense, we can ramble off in our 30-second elevator pitch what we've done, where we've been. I've worked for this company, but then what did you do while you were there? And you can talk about that to some level, but what about the abyss level of the role you were at this company and that company, or that project, going even further back into your academic training, or where you acquired your skills, or when you knew that this field and this focus or discipline of work was what you wanted to do. What was your thinking back then? And what did you do to manifest and invest in your growth to go from zero to where you are now? I kind of also call it this mistake of career amnesia. Like I was saying, a
Wow.
lot of us know how to elevator pitch and talk about high level where we've been, but when we miss the opportunity to objectively for ourselves look back at what we've done, our life's work up to now, our accomplishments and achievements up to now, a lot of that is forgotten. And so when it comes to identifying what your why is, or redefining what your why is, that's the very first thing I look to, depending on where people are at and what problems they are encountering, to get a sense or temperature check on what's happening for them, in order to also surface for them that force multiplier that is a different fuel source altogether. And so the career audit timeline is one of my favorite tools, and I've used it on myself a few times now.
That's amazing. I love that idea. You're pretty much taking people through their own, in a way, user journey,
Yep.
but they're through their eyes, they get to see the end to end of their career journey, and you're helping them see their entire, basically, or all this, or revisit their own story that got them to where they are. And these powerful conversations that you have with them, I bet, not only boost their confidence and helps them realize how much they're capable, when they may be coming to you feeling like, you know what, I don't know if I can do this. But then when you get them to see what they've done, they realize, holy crap, I didn't realize how much I've done. This is
Mhm.
amazing. And
Exactly.
then it sounds like what you do is you connect the dots for them, especially as someone who's done the job and is a principal designer, you're also able to assess, you'll be honest with them and let them know whether the goal is reasonable or not, because I feel like we all need that level of validation.
Mm,
Someone who's more experienced and a mentor who will tell us, like, are you ready for the Olympics? Or do you need
mm,
a little bit of training? Or do you need a lily pad before get to the Olympics? So that's
yeah.
great. And then the second step, is it
Mhm.
what is the second step after that, after they identify their why?
Yeah, so define your why and then creating your the brand of you, which when you think about it and you go to that 30,000-foot view, it's the package that we use in order to position ourselves for roles. And that recruiters and hiring teams use to assess us. So I'm not going to focus on the resume. That's probably the least important factor, but your portfolio, your LinkedIn, your the code, like the synthesis of what you've done into how you express it without you being in the room or on an interview call. It's the thing that's selling for you 24/7. And
Wow.
so when you know what your why is, what you've done, what you want, and essentially like like wiping the slate clean of, like, you no longer have career amnesia. To your point, Nada, the confidence comes back because
Yeah.
you earned all of that, and now it's time to focus that through the lens or lenses, so that other people can recognize that and not mislabel you. And that's exactly what happened with one of my clients, Shoji. This dude, was sitting on 10 years of freelance work that wasn't communicating the the raw power and uh the undeniable powers of his brilliance in a way that no one had understood before. But then I sat with him, and it took him some time. I'm not joking. It took us 2.5 hours to go through his
Wow.
audit, his timeline, and everything that took place. And he knew he lived that 10 years. But then when I saw his LinkedIn compared to, it was 10 years of and then unfolded and unpacked, I had to stop our session recording and start another recording for us to continue unpacking. And I'm like, I knew it. Do you see? And he's like, well, I knew, but like, gee willikers, like this, he doesn't talk that way. I'm just separating him. And he's like, gee willikers. Now I've got something to really work with. And then the question is, how do I position it now, Chris? How do I talk about all of this? And that's part of the work too. So, whew.
I see a lot of parallels in the product world. I'm not a designer, I'm more of a product person, but similar things.
Yeah.
When we build products, right? Or when we design them, um, we need to understand at the end of the day why we're building those products.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think of yourself in a way as a product, you got to be able to easily tell people why you and not someone else.
True.
And then the second part is we got to build a brand for that product and know how to market it. And to me, what you do in many ways is you help people rebuild their identity,
Mm.
not in a way that is, them being too perfect or not themselves, but many times when people come to us as coaches, I feel they're not operating in their highest potential and they're not being their best selves.
Mm.
And what you really do, it sounds like, is you help position people so that they're perceived in a way that aligns with their best selves. I'm just going to give a silly analogy of like when you're getting married and it's your wedding, right?
Mm. Mm.
You're not going to show up in your pajamas to your wedding. You're going to show up, all done up. And when you look in those pictures, you see your best self in those photos. You got to be presentable. And so same thing with products, right? If they're not packaged the right way, they're not going to be attractive or catch anyone's attention on the shelf. So you help people um, create the best perception of them.
Yeah.
And it's not about let's have the nitty gritty of what the resume layout is. None of these
Mm.
things matter on it, like when all said and done, right?
Yeah.
These are just symptoms. Your
Mm.
resume is confusing, your resume is shallow, your resume is hard to read because there's a bigger problem there, because you're not marketing yourself in a way that does you justice, in a
Correct.
clear way that people can understand, because people don't live inside your head. Recruiters can't read your mind, hiring managers can't read your mind. And sometimes it takes someone from the outside to help you read the label, because if you're inside the jar, you can't read the label from the outside.
That's right.
And then the third thing that you shared with me, um, I heard you at some point share with me that you help people communicate in a charismatic way. Tell
Hmm.
me a little bit more about that, because I feel like that what completely differentiates your program
Hmm.
than so many others. First of all, I don't think a lot of people spend enough time on helping people identify their why. There
Hmm.
are, people to some degree who talk about storytelling and marketing yourself, but I've never heard this whole professional charisma concept.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about where it comes from and why you believe that that needs to be a component when you coach people.
Yeah. So like this framework that I have to find your why, building your personal brand, and the professional charisma aspect, independently they're not enough, but it's like this force multiplying momentum from the first, the second, and into the third, where you are now breathing life into what your definition of your why is. You're breathing life and bringing color to the 24/7 sort of advertisement of the product of you through your portfolio and your resume and your LinkedIn, so that when people meet you for the first time in Zoom or in person, you're breathing life into this idea that they have of you, that they've only had of you in those arenas, in those domains. And so whether you're introverted, ambivert, extroverted, no matter where you are in this kind of spectrum, uh, what you're doing when you meet with someone is really and truly looking to confirm and help validate that not just you're capable of the job, but you're a 100% living, breathing person brimming with talent, and you're not afraid to talk about that, which for all intents and purposes, it's about tooting your horn, but not so much so I'm the bee's knees. I'm the shit. I am no. You want me? This is why I think it's. I hate one of these phrases in cover letters. This is why I believe I'm good. I'm a great fit for your. Nah, it's not that at all. It's really about knowing who you are and rediscovering that and
Yeah.
bringing it with you, and all the stories that come along with it, because no one else is like you. But what a lot of people tend to forget or miss the mark on is bringing that with them in sort of this like invisible suitcase and slamming it on the table in that interview. And it's like, what do you want to talk about? I ask me whatever you want, because it's also not about memorizing all of the interview questions under the sun. No, I look at it more as improv, like improv jazz. We relearn to play our instrument, and no matter what scenario or conversation unfolds, first, second, third, fourth stage, in seventh, I had 14 interviews for one of my dream job companies,
Oh my
and I
God.
didn't lose any stamina at all, not at all,
Because
because
you
I
were
knew why I was
motivated and
there.
excited.
Correct. Okay. And I had a panel interview with 8 people,
Oh,
and I presented everything I had. And I took minor breaks for a breath or a sip of water, and I was useless to the world afterwards. And my wife was driving me in the car to dinner. I was in the back seat with our infant, at that time. But and I got that job, but I
Oh.
knew going in that I wasn't leaving anything on the table, not just because I have this little spark of whatever you want to call extroversion. No, because that was my shot. And I wasn't going to leave anything. I was gonna I'm not good at sports, but you put it all and you leave it all on the court. And so being able to speak up for yourself and share what it is that makes you from a professional standpoint, and how you think and how you adapt to scenarios and working in cross-functional um, environments. This is what matters when we show up to these interviews, and even when we're in organizations trying to figure our way out through whatever path that is desired by us. And it bleeds into our presentations, whether it's for an interview or what have you. When you know what you want and how you want to communicate it, it becomes, you become a little bit unstoppable. And I've done it over and over and over again. And this is how I'm trying to help people win, really and truly. Because the unfortunate mistake that I'm seeing a lot of people make is that when they're asked a question, they go from being present to, yes, the answer to your question is this, that, and the other. CSAT, NPS.
Oh,
Yes. And
you're
they
killing me.
become robotic. And the human that was here
Oh.
is gone. And there's the disconnect. So which person am I interviewing now? And it sounds like they just memorized it out of ChatGPT, or they finagled one of their screens to the point where, yes, I am capable of user testing. Right?
Yeah, I
It
mean,
doesn't work.
exactly. And, in my world, I call it executive presence,
Mm,
but I truly believe it doesn't matter what level you are. You need to be able to connect with people and speak with them well,
yeah.
because that's how you're going to engage people. As a designer, you're going to be presenting your designs to people. You are going to need buy-in. If you don't develop that skill of being charismatic, of being personable, of engaging people, how are you going to persuade and get buy-in? And so, Chris, what you're teaching people is beyond just landing a role. You're helping them develop life skills,
Mm,
which to me is worth thousands of dollars, because going back to what I wish I had, I would pay thousands to be able to have someone gain the skill to sell myself and to persuade. So this is amazing. Thank you so much, Chris, for this amazing conversation. I want to take a moment and let people know that Chris has an amazing event that is coming up. Why don't you tell us, Chris, about this event? When is it going to happen, and how can people sign up for this?
yes. Yeah, I'm running a free training session about how to land a UX role that aligns with your why. It's going to be happening this coming Saturday, May 31st. The link to register for updates and the session itself, I will be sharing that. And I've been on my LinkedIn, I've been talking about it for the past week, almost 2 weeks anyway. So
Yeah.
if you go back,
Follow
you can
Chris, connect with him
follow
on LinkedIn.
and you can find that.
And if you
And
don't know where to find it, just DM him.
this is
But I
true.
highly recommend it's when is it again? Is it this
May
upcoming
31st,
weekend?
this Saturday at 1 p.m.
This
Eastern time.
Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
So mark your calendars, attend the event. Hey, you're not going to lose anything. And if you are serious about solving this problem, this is an incredible opportunity for you. Chris is generous, giving you his time, 1 hour of his time, showing you his framework and proven methods that not just helped him, but helped so many designers. So make sure you attend, guys. I mean, this is a golden opportunity. All right, amazing. Chris, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has an awesome night.
Thank you, Nada. Thank you, everybody. Take care.